Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Today we've got a really big interview with Variety with Robert Pattinson, basically talking a lot about the Batman. He also touches on the Lighthouse, which I will probably save for another video. It doesn't go that in depth. It's a lot of it is a focus on him after Twilight, soon to becoming Batman and things like that. And we will come into this article, but I've also got the Screen Rant articles open as well, which reference this, because it's a lot easier, a lot quicker, just to spot pick those, then go back to the article. So we'll get into that. I think this will make for an interesting video. If you are new here, make sure you hit subscribe. You can stay up to date on the world of pop culture and movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Also, what I will say, guys, is a lot of people, yesterday I said about my Joker merch, and I linked it down below. I'll link it again. There were some people having real issues trying to get through to it, so not overly sure. Hopefully I've rectified it now. But failing that, I'm going to try and sort it out so they show up underneath every video as well. But yeah, apologies for that. Got to address it because there was a lot of comments coming through, pro and against it. Some people could get through, some people couldn't. But let's get into it. Robert Pattinson was furious when the Batman casting leaked. Now, we know famously there was a lot of people in the lineup by Warner Brothers for this film. We didn't know how many. We knew that there was, well, we'd heard anyway that there was about 4 or 5 people in kind of the lineup for it all. Famously, Armie Hammer was part of that lineup. But a lot of people slept on Robert Pattinson. No one really thought that he would get it, and he did. Now, in the lead up to all of that, there's obviously a lot of discussions going on between teams, studio teams handling each individual actor. And he makes some comment about essentially that news breaking and it leaking. So he says, speaking specifically with Variety in that article, he says, "When that thing leaked, I was effing furious. Everyone was so upset. Everyone was panicking from my team. And I sort of thought I had blown the whole thing up. Basically, just thought the whole thing had just gone. He wouldn't get his chance anymore." Now, interestingly enough, he went on to say in the article, which they didn't leak, they didn't reveal down below, is that he sat there and ended up kind of Googling himself a lot. There's a little bit more information behind that. It's not just simply, oh, you know, I'm just sat there Googling myself or anything along those lines. He says very specifically, because of course, you know, basically everyone from the team was panicking and they thought that it had all gone up, you know, shit creek, basically. So he ended up scouring the internet for any clues that he'd been cut from the studio's wish list, because a lot of people would probably end up leaking that he was done. He wasn't in the run-up to it all. And like I said, very specifically here, he scoured the internet for any clues that he'd been cut from the studio's wish list. The man next to him leaned over to say hello, and he ended up being sat next to Christopher McQuarrie, which is, you know, the director behind the latest Mission Impossible. He then obviously explained what he had done, and they'd said, yeah, no, I'd probably be doing the same, which makes sense. But it's interesting just to show how invested he was in the character from such an early on position. You know, he clearly wanted to be a part of it. Now, this part of the interview is all about the Lighthouse, which we won't go into because it's not really specifically part of this. But he does say, as part of this one, is that Robert Pattinson wanted to play Batman for a long time, which sounds great. That's really, really, really good. And we also had some comments about how he didn't want to go into any other movies for some time because he didn't want to get typecast, or that's why you haven't seen him do a lot of big blockbusters. That's why he's been doing a lot of art house films. But he also says, and this is the sign of someone who isn't necessarily just in it for the money. He says very specifically that the more art house type of films are more interesting. You know? So he says big movies, generally the parts aren't as interesting. At least the stuff that was coming my way. I guess there was some fear after Twilight. So that's good. That, to me, says that he's chosen a project now that he believes in. And I think that bodes well for the Batman. But on the topic of him wanting to be a part of the Batman, he says, "I'd had Batman in my mind for a while. It's such an absurd thing to say. I sort of had an idea to do it, and I'd been prodding Matt. He didn't accept any prods. I kept asking to meet him, and then I had to kind of try to imagine what he'd written. And I hadn't even read the script. I'd come with this pad full of notes, and as discussions, kept continuing, Pattinson arrived in Cannes in May, and all hell broke loose in the press that he was obviously, basically gone to be the film. And was front runner. I was like, oh F, does that screw me because they are so intent on secrecy? I'm literally in Cannes in my hotel room rehearsing, and Pattinson says the whole thing was a lot. So it's interesting again that he'd had it in his mind for a while, and interesting that he'd never read a script, but he had a pad full of notes. Again, I think that bodes really, really well for this film. And then we get on to another surprise, interesting part, which I thought we'd save till last, because I think this is really interesting. Robert Pattinson has already tried on his batsuit. Which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, in terms of this, it says, I put it on, and it is the actual batsuit, apparently. So, I put it on, and I remember saying to Matt, it does feel quite transformative. He was like, I would hope it does. You're literally in the batsuit. You do feel very powerful immediately, and it's very astonishing, something that is incredibly difficult to get into. So the ritual of getting into it is pretty humiliating. You've got 5 people trying to shove you into something. Once you've got it on, it's like, yeah, I feel strong, I feel tough, even though I had to have somebody squeezing my butt cheeks into the legs. Sounds great. I mean, obviously, I don't, we're not talking about him being squeezed into a bloody batsuit like a sausage, but it does sound good. It sounds like they are well underway with the film. It sounds like they are really, really fleshing it out now. I mean, it's basically set to start production momentarily. So there's not an awful lot of other stuff in this article, this big interview. A lot of it's all to do with his other comments about fan backlash and stuff, which it is interesting. So when Pattinson was named as the front runner for the role, the backlash on social media was intense, which it was. But I also, for those that doubt Pattinson, I just want to direct you to his other films. I was one of those people that doubted him, but I have taken a look at his filmography now, a little bit more extensively than I had before. He's very good. He is actually very good. So the backlash was intense. A petition even surfaced on change.org. Oh my god. Asking Warner Brothers to reconsider. It says, this will ruin my childhood and my dreams, one commenter posted. But Pattinson, his reaction to it is actually really professional. So he says, to be honest, it was less vitriolic than I was expecting. And he's not deterred by the doubters. It's much more fun when you're an underdog. There's no expectation of you, which is true. Think about Heath Ledger. Think about Heath Ledger going into the role of the Joker. Does anyone remember the amount of hate that he was getting? The internet quickly tries to forget these things when there's a huge success on their hands. People really thought he would suck because he was this pretty boy in Hollywood. And then he was cast as the Joker. And my God, what a role. What a fantastic role for him. So that's the other thing, when there's no expectation of you, you can just go in and absolutely kill it if you're a good actor. Which Pattinson actually is a good actor. He's not. If you've only seen him in the Twilight crap, then he has not shown much range. But he is a good actor. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really looking forward to The Lighthouse, because that looks just batshit crazy. Pun intended, I guess. Which sounds awesome. I'm really, really looking forward to this. He's completely right. When you're an underdog, there are no expectations. The only expectation is for him to be absolutely crap. And I think he'll bring his A game. It sounds incredibly positive. I think he will do really, really well. So I'm looking forward to it. But there you go. That's kind of the bulk of this article. The other stuff, there's not an awful lot. Like, it's to do with his career and talking about working with Netflix, streaming services, and all of this other stuff. So I might do a talk about his Lighthouse stuff, which he goes on to, kind of down here, talking about the Lighthouse. But there's not an awful lot in there to kind of digest, so probably just save that for a quick news piece. But what do you think about these comments? Does that fill you with confidence now, or does it deter you even further from him taking up the mantle of Batman. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Like I said, if you are new here, make sure you hit subscribe. You can turn the bell notifications turn the bell notifications on to stay up to date on the world of pop culture and movie news. I'm a little bit tired, I do apologise. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm Mr. H. Take care.